Hey everyone, my name is Bridget Karp and I am a graduate student studying speech-language pathology at Yeshiva University in New York City. Do you ever think about what your body is doing when you breathe, speak, and eat? Most of us don't. We take these processes for granted and can perform them comfortably. When we breathe, we're not really thinking about what our body is doing. It's an automatic process. We might think a little bit more when we're eating, but we're not considering how our jaw is moving and how our structures are moving in order to allow us to swallow our food. Finally, we think the most about speaking, the words and the tone we want to use, and the message we want to convey to a listener. However, we're not thinking about how our lips, teeth, tongue, and other structures are working in order for us to produce speech. We just speak. These three processes that we perform on a daily basis, breathing, speaking, and eating, are all ones we take for granted. We don't really think about them and we just perform them. As a student studying speech-language pathology, I think more deeply about the processes involved with breathing, speaking, and eating. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, since I can perform all of these acts without much trouble, should I watch this video? Yes, you should. It's important to know the structures involved and how the body functions when you breathe, speak, and eat. It's important to acknowledge that your body does so much work to allow you to perform these three daily acts that we take for granted. I wanted to gather the public's thoughts on what they know about breathing, speaking, and eating, and how this information impacts their daily lives. On a survey, I asked people, of the following actions, which one do you think about the most when you perform it? The options were breathing, speaking, and eating. Most respondents said speaking, which makes a lot of sense. We spend a lot of time thinking about what we're going to say and how we're going to say it, whether it be to family, friends, coworkers, or in another environment. However, in order to speak, we need to breathe. You can't speak without breathing. So, while it's important to spend a lot of time thinking about speech, it's also important to be cognizant of breathing. When we breathe, our rib cage, abdomen, and diaphragm are all actively moving. Our sternum or breastbone, the clavicle or the collarbone, and our ribs all elevate and our diaphragm contracts. It moves up or down depending on if we are inhaling or exhaling. When we inhale, our diaphragm lowers. This allows our lungs to expand and to intake as much air as possible. Then, when we exhale, our diaphragm rises back to the original position that it was in. This allows us to expel carbon dioxide. Our bodies repeat this process over and over to allow us to breathe and to survive. There are 11 muscles of the rib cage that allow us to inhale, and there are 12 muscles of the rib cage and the abdomen that allow us to exhale. In addition to the chest wall, which includes the rib cage, abdomen, and diaphragm, there's the pulmonary apparatus, which contains the trachea, or more commonly known as the windpipe, and our lungs. The lungs contain and conduct air and gas exchange, and the chest wall and pulmonary apparatus work together in order to allow us to breathe. Now, we have a special type of breathing for speech, known as speech breathing, which is very complex. It allows us to control our gas exchange and certain aspects of speech, such as loudness, pitch, and segmenting words into syllables. Now, for speech, one of the most important structures is the larynx, or our voice box. Without our larynx, we would have no sound source, and we would have no way to be able to speak. The larynx is made up of 5 different cartilages, one of which many of us are familiar with, the epiglottis. The larynx also is made up of 6 intrinsic muscles which allow the larynx to be positioned and regulate air. And the vocal folds, which are also active during speech. Our vocal folds come together and pull apart. When they come together, that's known as adduction, and when they pull apart or separate, that is abduction. This adduction and abduction of the vocal folds creates vibrations, and the sound from our larynx escapes through the glottis, or the opening between the vocal folds, producing sound. In addition to our larynx, we also have facial and tongue muscles that are needed for both speech and eating. The facial and tongue muscles are collectively known as the perioral muscles. The facial muscles allow us to move our lips, mouth, cheeks, and chin, which all assist in producing speech. We have certain facial muscles that allow our lips to round for certain sounds, such as an ooh, and spread our lips like an eh. So the lips, teeth, gums, cheeks, tongue, and palate are all articulators. What that means is two of the structures touch in order to produce a sound, such as the tip of the tongue hitting the back of the teeth. The teeth and the palate are two structures that make up the maxilla, or the upper jaw. And the maxilla has two processes that are important to speech, the alveolar and the palatine. The alveolar process allows us to produce the sounds t, d, s, and z. And the palatine process is a place for the tongue to articulate. There are 8 tongue muscles that all activate to produce speech. Our tongue is located in the oral cavity, and the oral cavity allows us to adjust our volume of speech. There is finally the velopharyngeal apparatus, which includes the velum, the pharynx, and the nose, which modulates air and gas exchange for our speech. Finally, we have the process of eating. Eating involves the masticatory muscles, and to masticate is to chew. There are 4 muscles that allow us to chew. And there are 4 areas of the tongue that allow us to sense different tastes. The 4 tastes that the tongue can sense are bitter, salty, sour, and sweet. The tongue, masticatory muscles, and the pharynx all attach to the temporal bones of the skull, which make up the sides of the skull. The pharynx is a muscular tube lined with mucus that lets food pass through the esophagus and eventually into the stomach for digestion. I have discussed what structures are involved in breathing, speaking, and eating, and how they function in order to allow us to perform these actions. Now, it's important to know these structures and functions and how much work your body is doing when performing these daily acts that we take for granted. There are many people that have disorders that affect their breathing, speaking, and/or their eating. Many people I surveyed said they know at least one person with a combination of disorders that affect these different processes. I hope that this video was a starting point for your learning of the structures and functions that allow you to perform the daily actions that we take for granted: breathing, speech, and eating. Thank you, and bye.